With the wipe around the corner, it's time to start buffing up on that Tarkov knowledge. And what better way to do it than with a bunch of tips? Today, I'll be talking about these 7 categories, which is not everything in Tarkov, but it covers a lot of different stuff. So I highly encourage you to jump around to whatever interests you most. If you're new around here and like what you see, I encourage you to hit that sub button, just so I don't get lost in the sea of Tarkov creators. So I hope you guys learned something new today. Let's jump into it. You can quickly search items in the Hideout by right-clicking the image and filter by item. It takes you directly to the flea market, so you can purchase all your ingredients for crafts directly from the Hideout. It's extremely convenient. Auxiliary tools are marked with a red or blue wrench. These tools will not be consumed in the process of making the craft. This is a newer change to the game, and it makes a lot more sense than it did before, because it would consume tools. Tarkov only renders so many bullet impacts at once, so if you want to clear your targets, all you have to do is shoot at other spots in the Hideout, and eventually your targets will clear. This is kind of a workaround method, but it gets the job done. Hopefully one day we have a reset button. You can instantly reload and reset the status of your gun and suppressor by stepping back and re-engaging with the shooting range. This is a much faster way rather than reloading every single time. If you've ever noticed the annoying buzz in the Hideout, it's actually the fluorescent lights above your head. Since these are the brightest lights in the Hideout, it is pretty annoying that they make so much noise, but if you change the light bulb type to the regular bulb, it is a little darker in the Hideout, but it does eliminate the buzzing sound. Press N to activate NVGs in the Hideout. Even if you don't have them on, it will still work as regular NVGs. This feature will be especially helpful next wipe, as they're reworking how tactical device illumination works within NVGs. You could also do this by hitting Escape and using the NVG button that's in the menu. You can test out face shields if you think they're damaged and you don't know where the impact is on the face shield. Go into the Hideout and put the face shield on, and you'll be able to see if there's a bullet impact on the shield. And you can even take that a step further, and if you want to repair the face shield, as long as the face shield is damaged enough, you'll get an option to repair the face shield, and as long as you're able to click that repair button, it's going to mend all the bullet impacts to the face shield. And you can test it right there in the Hideout to make sure it worked. Don't construct the air filter unless you know it's fixed next wipe. I am making this before wipe 12.13, but it has been bugged for the majority of this wipe, and it was not working as intended. So just double check before you construct this next wipe. The game has a couple useful features when it comes to your generator being on. It has one warning at the bottom left of the screen when you're about to run out of fuel, and another one when you're about to exit the game when the generator is still on. This is a great reminder if you don't want to waste fuel and you're not doing any crafts overnight. Jumping over to trader tips, there are 2 task-related icons that will appear next to your trader's image. The blue checkmark indicates that I have completed tasks for this trader. I can go in and click the complete button to finish those tasks. And the green checkmark with a circle means I have tasks available to accept from the trader. This will show up for regular tasks as well as operational tasks, the daily and weeklies. Operational tasks are daily and weekly tasks that will refresh every day and every week. You start getting dailies at level 5 and you start getting your weeklies at level 15. The higher the level you are, the better the reward is for these tasks. You also have the option to replace the task if you don't like your daily or weekly. The only thing is it will cost money, or in some cases, reputation with that trader. You can find these with your other tasks, but they'll be in another section called operational tasks. Your dailies and your weeklies will end up there. The traders offer services, but only Ragman has the services tab at the moment. He gives you the option to buy clothes for your PMC. You can actually try those clothes on by just right-clicking the option you want, and it will apply it to your character. And you can take it one step further by right-clicking your character. It applies all the current gear you have on your character at that time. So you can make sure you're going to look tactical with your favorite kit. To level up each trader, you'll need to spend a certain amount with each of them. Obviously, I've spent a lot more than needed, but there's an easy way to get money spent with them. All you need to do is find an item that you can buy an unlimited quantity of. Some items will be limited to a few per restock, so be sure to watch out for that. Also, you want to make sure the trader does buy back that item, so test it with items first. In this scenario, I know Jaeger buys Taj shotguns, so all you need to do is back out to the main menu and then back into the trader, and it will refresh those items, making them sellable again. Repeat this as needed, and it'll be really easy to meet this money requirement. Under each trader, there's a timer, and this timer indicates the global restock of their inventory. They all have different timing, and some refresh faster than others. The reason this is important because a lot of items become very unavailable at the beginning of wipe. Right now, you don't see a lot of items out of stock, But at the beginning, for instance, this Saiga shotgun is never in stock. And that's because it has a lot of great attachments for a pretty cheap barter, all things considering. So if you're looking to get certain items and they keep going out of stock, pay attention to that restock timer and maybe even set an alarm on your phone and just purchase it as soon as it refreshes. You can hit this refresh button at the top left of the screen, so as soon as the timer ends, you can refresh there and the item should be available. If you want to save a little time, or you just don't like building guns from scratch, you can actually save traders' guns as your own presets. All you have to do is right click on the gun and edit the preset, and then save it as your own name. Head over to the preset menu, type in the name, and it'll be there just like at the mechanic. From there, you can modify it as needed. The next one is a bug that's been in the game for as long as I can remember. When you go to enter the quantity on an item that you're wanting to buy, and delete the initial value, instead of clearing the field, it adds a 1 by default and puts the cursor to the left of the 1. This wouldn't be an issue if the cursor was on the right of the 1, but that's not the case. So when you enter your new value, instead of buying 4, you're buying 41 cheeses, and you waste a ton of money. A lot of people have to learn the hard way, maybe you don't. When you're buying an item from a trader, you need to fill the items, whether that's cash or it's a barter. You can click this blue bar and then hit deal to complete the transaction. Or you could use this checkbox to fill items automatically. Now it's a one-click process and it will fill anything you have in your inventory instead of you having to hit fill items every single time. The main way that traders are going to interact with you is through the messaging system in the game. You'll receive packages from all the different traders for things like quest rewards, flea market transactions, insurance returns, and more. But there's one thing you need to be really careful of. If you take too long receiving any of these packages, they will eventually be deleted. So make sure you accept your packages in a decent amount of time. Every trader will buy items for different amounts, so you want to make sure you sell to the optimal trader for every single item. This will ensure that you're getting the most money for your items. Eventually, you'll just know what to sell to who, but at first, it's good to have a guide, and I found a guide on tarkovprofessional.com. I've never used this site before, but they had a nice, clean way of showing what to sell to what trader. I'll link this in the description below, and you could refer to it when you're going to sell items. And this could change at any point, because at one time, Skier was one of the best people to sell to. Now you don't sell anything to him, so it's just something to keep an eye on. When insuring your items, you can select Prepper for a slower return time and a cheaper price, or you can select Therapist for a faster return time but a more expensive price. I normally just stick with Prepper to save the money. I don't know if this is a bug right now or they meant for it to be this way, but right now, if the higher level you are or the higher trader level you are, the more expensive your insurance is going to be. For these 3 items on my level 42 account, I'm paying almost $20,000 for insurance, and these items are pretty basic. On my wife's level 6 account, I'm only paying $10,000 for these 3 items. So you can imagine how much the difference is when you're using a lot of expensive gear. Hopefully this gets adjusted in the future, because right now it's really counterintuitive to how the gameplay flows. You should be rewarded for leveling up, not punished. Like I mentioned before, you'll be receiving your insurance in the messages from Prepper or Therapist. Each individual claim will come as separate messages, or you could hit the Receive All button, which is a lot easier. When you hit the Receive All button, the older items will be at the bottom, which means they will expire first. So make sure you pick from the bottom if you're going to gear yourself up with your insurance returns. This next part isn't necessarily for traders, but a little insuring guide for you. If you're going in with teammates, I always recommend just insuring everything, because they could just dump your gear if you die. Especially at lower levels like you saw earlier, it's always worth it if you're going in with a team. I also always insure everything if I know I'm going to run into rogues or any other hard AI. If you're going solo, I pretty much insure everything except the gun, because those are more likely to get dumped, and the gun is usually a prize for your opponent, if it's a good enough one. If I want to save a little bit more money, I don't insure the high tier helmets, because those usually get taken anyway, but if you do insure them, you could switch out your helmets for your opponents if you kill them. Jumping over to flea market tips, always make sure to sort your price by lowest to highest. And sometimes you have to click it a couple times to get it to work correctly. Many times people will post something really expensive hoping the player is sorted by highest to lowest and accidentally purchases that item. So keep an eye out for that. Another good thing to do is set your currency filter to only rubles. That way you never get tricked by anything that is selling in USD or euros. It's not often that those are usually a good deal for the buyer. So go ahead and just set it to rubles unless you're trying to spend that currency in particular. When you're buying weapons, make sure you have show functional items only selected. That way when you're buying guns, they're going to work right out of the gate. This option also works well for things like fuel tanks. If you want to make sure there's fuel in there and you don't accidentally buy an empty one, make sure show functional items is checked. And this next one is an old bug that keeps resurfacing. If you run into a scenario where all your items are out of stock, make sure you set the quantity to 1. This will alleviate the issue, and I don't even know if this is going to happen again, but I've seen it resurface a few times, so it doesn't hurt to know the solution. If this isn't set by default, you should make sure you select it on your own. Make sure you remove bartering offers from your list. More often than not, this will not benefit you, and it will benefit the person who posted the barter. So honestly, I would just stay away from those until you know what you're doing. On the flip side of that though, there are certain keys that you can only get with barters. This wipe to get Marin keys, Hillside keys, which are 2 keys on Lighthouse, or the Marked Room keys, you pretty much had to trade with other players other valuable keys. So if you see an item that doesn't have any listings, there probably are barters for it. Just be careful what you barter for and make sure you're getting a good deal. A useful temporary filter you can use is the condition filter. If you're looking for a gun and you don't want to get those nasty scav guns, all you have to do is set your condition to about 90% to 100%. That way you're only going to get really good guns. This also works really well for armors, and you can get things at a discount if you don't do perfect condition. So always make sure you check a little bit below too. A nice little feature you can do is you can hit the refresh button at the top right to refresh all the deals, or you can hit F5 and it will refresh the page as well, just like a web browser would do if you hit F5. One feature I really like is the wish list. If you add items to the wish list, you can kind of use it like makeshift loadouts. You do have to buy every item individually, but it has all the things that you normally buy, and it's really fast and you don't have to go to individual traders to do it. If you place an offer that's a little bit too expensive and it's not selling, or you just want to try to cancel it, all you have to do is scroll down to it in the list and remove it from there. But if you can't find it, go to My Offers page and you can remove it there. It does take a minute to take off the market, so if you price it too low, it's probably going to be gone. On that same topic, if you see a red arrow pointing down on somebody's rating, that means they removed something from the market or they placed something too high that didn't sell. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing negative that happens to your account. It just means you're kind of a flea market bad boy, I guess. I don't know. Your flea market rating is what determines how many offers you can place at once. By default, you start at 2, but at level 30, you can place 3 offers. It used to be default 3, and at level 10, you got your 4th offer. So I hope BSG makes an adjustment to this, because this is after 6 months of playing. I don't think regular players are ever going to hit 30. When you're adding items to be sold, you could actually go inside containers if you hit right click and open. Then once you select the item, you can pull up the offer and place it from there. But if you close that container, it will clear the item selected. The auto select feature is a really useful feature for posting multiple of the same item. It saves you a lot of time, and all you have to do is click the item once and it'll select everything within that container. If you want to select everything within your stash, that stuff needs to be moved to your main stash and then selected from there. It will not select throughout all the different containers. Jumping into weapon tips, first you need to make sure you have the workbench unlocked to be able to use the preset menu. You can get to the preset menu by using the tab below. From there, you'll need to select a stock preset and build your gun from scratch. Or you can right click and edit a preset of an existing gun, and that will take you to the preset menu as well. If you haven't unlocked the workbench yet, you'll have to manually assemble your guns, so you'll need to do it within your stash. Normally, you'd only do this with simplistic weapons, and you'd work for the workbench as fast as you can. So this is more of a temporary solution. Similar to the preset menu, there's also a modding menu. If you go to modding, or you double click your gun and hit the modding button, it will bring you to a modding screen that will only give you the options of the items that you have within your stash. So if you save a lot of parts, this is a good way to assemble guns that are hidden deep within other containers. You can quickly fold the stocks of certain guns if you middle mouse click them, but this doesn't work with every single gun. When you're in raid and you get mags from an enemy, they're gonna have a question mark. Instead of right clicking and checking magazine, all you have to do is middle mouse click and it will check the magazine for you. In the game tab, make sure you have highlight available operations set to everything. This makes assembling guns a lot easier because it will highlight the gun that the part fits on. It just takes a little bit less mental load when you're assembling guns in your stash. If you drag a new gun part onto your gun, it doesn't show the adjusted stats unless you drag it onto the specific rail that it will be attached to. This is a little bit weird, but it does help to know if you do need to compare some stats. On that same note, if you want to compare stats while you're in the preset menu, all you have to do is open this info panel on the left side, and as you're hovering through other part options, it will show the adjusted value within the window. Always make sure you check the chambered round if you got your gun from a scav or a player. Your mag could be loaded with really good ammo, but if the chambered round is still in there, it could be a really bad round and that could be your first shot at an enemy. To remove it, you have to drag it twice, it's kind of funky, or you can hit Control, left click, and it'll go into your stash. On that same note, you can chamber your gun within the stash if you just drag a stack onto your gun. This is useful if you're using small mags because you get an extra round on top of what your mag holds. If you right click any magazine, you can load ammo that's in your stash and it'll give you a list of compatible ammo. This saves you a lot of time because you don't have to go digging through different ammo boxes to find the right ammo. You can use that same feature for a little bit of efficiency. After you unload, you can drag the stack into your pouch and right click and top up. Then it's very simple to load the mag up again. Loading guns that don't have magazines can be a little bit trickier in the hideout. All you need to do is pull out the internal part and load that part manually. Just make sure the gun is in the stash because sometimes it doesn't work when it's in your PMC sling. You can now repair weapons using the weapon repair kit. The repair kit was added this wipe and it can be found in Raid. It ends up saving you a lot of money and repairs almost as well as Mechanic does. You also need the workbench unlocked to use the weapon repair kits. When you're assembling guns in the stash, they're going to get bigger going downwards and to the right. If the gun is positioned any other way where it can't grow to the right or going down, it will be blocked and you won't be able to assemble the gun. Unfortunately, the game is just not smart enough to reposition the gun and to assemble it automatically. So make sure you position guns to the top left of any given space and you shouldn't have any troubles. If you right click a gun and link search it, it'll show you all the available parts to go directly onto this gun. It also shows you the ammo available for it as well. When you have more complicated guns, you can't just right click the gun and expect it to show you the correct parts. What you'll have to do is link search the particular parts and then you'll find the things that you need. For instance, if you need a foregrip, you will need to link search that rail in particular. This works with all parts the same way, so if you know what it connects to, that's how you can find particular items. But of course, it's obviously easier to do this in the preset menu. This is just another option for it. If you need to find what ammo goes into a certain mag, all you need to do is link search that mag and it'll show you a list of ammo available for it. Just be careful because some ammo may be the same mag, but may not work on certain guns. And finally, the last link search I'm going to tell you about is if you link search ammo, it's going to show you all the available mags for it and what guns actually use this ammo. So this is a good way to see if you have a bunch of ammo laying around, what kind of guns you can buy to use that ammo. Whenever you unlock the flea market at level 15, I highly suggest identifying all weapon parts within the game. This is going to allow you to build guns more efficiently, giving you every single option that's available to you, rather than you having to identify them as you go. All you're going to have to do is go to the flea market and open the weapon parts and mods list and go through every single category. There are a lot of mods in this game. Just set aside an hour and get it all done. Click on every single item and middle mouse click the image to identify it. Don't spend your time right clicking and examining, that'll take even longer. If you killed the juicer and they had a really nice gun build and you want to save it, make sure you right click the gun and edit the preset. All you have to do from there is save as and save it whatever you want to name it as, and you'll be able to pull it up later and build the gun by yourself. A really useful feature you can do is actually tag your magazines. So if you have a magazine that you want to use for scavs and use crappy ammo, you can use a tag system and tag them with a specific color. Pretend like these mags look identical and I'm not an idiot and chose different looking mags anyway. Just keep in mind your enemies can actually see what you tag the mags as, so you can write some little dirty messages to them if you want. To select a particular mag, all you have to do is hold R and scroll. That's going to give you a little menu where you can scroll and select a particular mag that you want. A lot of people don't know about this option, so it's a really useful thing, especially if you're doing the tagging system that we talked about a second ago. Jumping into some stash tips, stash size is directly related to the version of the game that you bought. So people with the EOD have a full stash like I have here. But if you didn't buy the EOD edition, you could also go into your hideout and upgrade your stash within the hideout. It is quite expensive though, so it does take a long time to upgrade. If your stash is really messy and you got items all over the place, there's a function called auto sort. It's at the very bottom left of your stash, and you can sort everything within your stash and it'll automatically categorize everything together. The only issue is, if you have a bunch of containers and you have everything set up the way you like it, those containers will also get sorted. They plan on having a locking mechanism where containers don't get moved, but until then, we're out of luck. You can also auto sort within containers, which becomes very useful as you start getting more items. The button's at the top right of the container, and it auto sorts everything within that container. It doesn't do it perfectly, but it does group things as close as they possibly can. The sorting table is an essential feature for stash management. The button is located right above the auto sort button. You can drag any item type or container into the sorting table. It will expand with the more items you put in. Just remember, when you close the window, all the items will go to the top of your stash. Shift click to send items directly to the sorting table. The backpack stack is an essential way to organize your backpacks in Tarkov. It's kind of like a Russian doll and it just stacks unlimitedly, so I would never put anything at the bottom of the backpacks. Using the filters on the left-hand side of the stash is a great way to organize your stash. I like to use that in combination with the sorting table, then select the category you want to clean up and start putting items in your sorting table. Then once you want to start dumping those items into containers, you do need to unfilter because otherwise it won't let you put the item inside the container. The discard key that you use to dump items off players' bodies is also to delete items within the stash. So be careful when you're deleting stuff in the stash. I don't usually do it, I just sell it, but you can delete containers that are very important. Similar to how we were tagging magazines earlier, you could also tag containers within your stash. This helps organize everything so much more, especially with the color coordination. I normally use it for ammo and magazines, but you can use it for any type of container really. It's a little bit annoying to scroll about 6 times to get to the bottom of your stash, but if you hit page up and page down, you can actually go instantly to the bottom and instantly to the top. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's very important to have highlight available operations set to everything. That way, when you're organizing your stash, it will highlight the containers that your item can go into. So it's really handy and takes the mental load off when you're organizing your stash. One of the most annoying things in this game is having to navigate all the menus just to get back to your stash, to organize things, and what you can actually do is hit tab anywhere in the menu and it will pull your stash up at any time. That means when you're in the hideout or if you're at the insurance screen, all you have to do is hit tab and it pulls your stash up. So if you forgot something while you're in insurance, you can hit tab, grab the item you forgot, and be right back to it. This saves you a ton of clicks and it's really useful. Jumping over to keybind tips, under press type, you have continuous and you have press. Continuous is actually hold and press is actually toggle. I'm not sure why BSG uses this naming convention, but that's what it is. You can bind your heavy and light bleed stop items to one single button. You will have to use 2 items to do this, but if you set one to press and one to release, set the heavy bleed to press and the light bleed to release. That way it prioritizes on press, and if you don't have a heavy bleed, on release it will hit the light bleed. This will make 2 slots in your hotbar bound to one button. With this setup, you will need to manually drag those items to the hotbar. I like to use the hemostat and the army bandage for this option. Then I normally use a Soluo for actually healing the limbs. If you have the default hold breath set up, which is Alt, as soon as you aim in and press Alt, your scope will steady. But if you like to use your scope with toggle or press, you actually have an option to bind both of those with the same keybind, meaning right when you aim in, your scope's already steady. So all you have to do is set your aim to press and set your hold breath to right mouse button release. Similar to the other keybind setup, as soon as you press the button and then release the button, it should steady the scope. The only weird thing is you can't stop holding your breath unless you unaim, I assume. I can't actually run this setup because I like to hold my aim, but for those of you who like to toggle, this will work perfect for you. And then if you don't like Alt as your hold breath button, and you'd like it to be like other games where Shift is your hold breath, all you have to do is share that button with your sprint. So set hold breath to Shift, and then change the press type to release. Then whatever your sprint is, make sure it's a different press type. I like to toggle my sprint so it is on press, but if you like to hold your sprint, you can set it to continuous. Using a similar method to all these other keybinds, you can inspect your weapon and fix a malfunction with the same button. I set my check chamber fix malfunction button to 8 and put it on press, and my inspect weapon button to 8 and put it on release. As soon as you get the malfunction, press the button once, and then your PMC will identify the problem at the bottom right. Press it again, and then he'll fix it. I rebound smooth lean to left alt Q and E rather than left alt A and D. I felt like it made sense since I already lean with Q and E to also smooth lean with Q and E, which means you also need to rebind sidestep right and left to left alt D and left alt A, which once again already makes more sense because you already step left with A and you already step right with D. So these kind of just make more sense in general. I highly recommend rebinding your discard button to something very convenient. I have mine on my mouse because that's the most convenient for me, but if you don't have many mouse buttons, maybe you could use a button like tilde, which is right above your tab button, and then rebind console to something else. I also highly recommend using a single button for switch between sites. Right now I use left control and I put it on release. Since control is often used as a modifier, it needs to be on release so you don't activate anything else. This allows me to switch scopes extremely fast and I don't have to use a 2-button setup. By default, I believe it's control and right mouse button, which is not convenient at all. So definitely use a single button, and if you use control, set it to release. Another action I recommend putting on your mouse is toggle your tactical device. Right now it's set to T by default, which you can't move right while turning on your device. If you put it on your mouse, you can actually move around and turn your device on really quickly. It's a lot easier for pushing areas and keeping your device off until necessary. This next one's not necessarily a keybind, but to quickly bind your hotbar setup, instead of dragging each item to the slot, all you have to do is hover the item and press the keybind. Now this doesn't work with our double bleed stop keybind, but it does work for everything else. If you ever get annoyed by those alerts at the bottom of the screen, all you have to do is click the alerts and it will get rid of the handbook alerts. You can't do it to messages and you can't actually do it to the hideout, but at least you can clear those handbook ones. And they will come back quite often, so it doesn't help that much, but it's kind of interesting. You could use this pin icon to pin certain threads to the top of the list. Oftentimes, you're probably just gonna hit this pin on accident and it might be a little bit annoying. You can add friends at the top right of the messages, and all you have to do is search their name and right click add. Incoming friend requests will be at the bottom of this window in the pending request section. If you get killed by somebody and you're curious what their level was, you can actually search their name in this friends list tab and then find their name and see what level they are. This is useful for spotting unusual characters, if you know what I mean. You can change your character voice at any time on the sound tab. At one point it was locked, but now it's free to change at any time.
What the hell was that?
Fucking terror group.
If you want to test out the voice a little more, go to the controls tab and then go over to phrases. There you can click through the phrases and it'll be in the character's voice that you just selected. Then you can test out a little bit more and see if you like their voice.
Okay, I'm on it.
You can also assign these phrases to certain keybinds in your F keys. So all you have to do is right click the phrase and assign it to a key. The interface volume slider is very important. If you have this too loud, all the noises you make in the menu is going to be very distracting when you're in raid and you need to be listening while you're looting. So having it at 50% is a good amount where you can still hear the item noises, but it's not too distracting. And you'll definitely want to lower the hideout volume because it sounds like a wind tunnel when that thing's maxed out. And I think by default it is 100%. So about 10% is fine for me. Binaural audio is actually what Steam audio is. So if you've heard them talking about Steam audio, this is the most recent implementation of audio in Tarkov, so it will be the one that's most updated, and the one that I use. Within your task tab, there is a section called Quest Items Inventory. Not a lot of people use this, but there are particular quests where you need to bring an item and take it to another map. For instance, in the task delivery from the past, you have to take secure folder 0022 from customs to factory. And if you die, you have to go back to customs. So if you want to save this folder for when a friend gets online, you could pop it into your special stash and pull it out when your friend gets online and do the mission together. I can't think of too many more examples for this, but maybe in the future there will be. There's a notes feature next to quest items where you can make basic notes. It's just a text editor, but to have it in game is kind of cool. I'd rather use a third-party option, but it's still nice to have. They finally added task sorting to the tasks page. It was needed so long ago, so now you could sort by location or you could sort by trader, so you could kind of get things a little bit more organized rather than scrolling through this whole long list of tasks. It was definitely needed and I'm so glad it's in the game now. This is a bit of a 2-for-1. For your health condition, set it to always shown, and for the color scheme, do polychrome. If it's always shown, you can actually see your status at all times. It is a little annoying to have it in the corner, but you could always know what's going on with your limbs. And with polychrome, it's so much easier to see which limb is damaged. As you can see, they're yellow. If it was monochrome, it would just be a shade of red. And since your status is always showing, you can actually see if your painkiller is still active just from looking at it. Otherwise, you have to go to the health tab. I'd personally like an option where you could still show the status icons, but not show the whole diagram, just to save a little space on the screen. If you have a physical map, you can actually use it in game, but it does take up a slot, which is not really worth it. I'd honestly just rather use a third party on my other monitor if I needed a map still. And last but not least, you can add little notes to this map and give it to other players. It's extremely useless, but it's the archaic way of communicating with players before we had VoIP. So have fun with it. I got a message from somebody on a map earlier this wipe, and it was pretty funny to read. If you guys are still here and watched all 100, I do appreciate you stopping in, and I hope you guys learned something new today. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.